I just have to open an applesauce really quick. Here you go. I'm home with a sick toddler right now. Sorry about that.
Oh, no.
My name is Corey Brzezinnik. I'm a chemical engineer from Texas Tech University. I received my master's in business administration just a few years ago. So when I achieved that, I transitioned from a manufacturing role in the company to a business role. I've been with Chevron Phillips for 9 years. I started as a field support engineer working on projects, troubleshooting, helping the plant with any issues they were having on a day-to-day basis to make sure that they were running safely and reliably. And then I spent a good portion of my career, about 5 years, on an ethylene plant, which ethylene is not really something you can hold or touch, but it's a chemical that's a building block and lots of chemicals that we produce that you see every day: plastic, synthetic oils, things that go in your soap, your candles, things like that. So I spent about 5 years on a plant that produced ethylene in the operations unit. So I worked inside the facility. It's a great experience. You sweat a lot, you walk a lot, you climb a lot, and you get to see a lot of really cool equipment torn down, opened up, fixed, repaired, modified. You get a lot of involvement, really intimate with the machines and the people that make these products run. And then after that, I spent 2 years in a role that we call operational excellence, which is a role focused on compliance and continuous improvement. So I got a lot of exposure to OSHA, safety regulations, environmental regulations, things of that nature. And I helped the company write and enforce and teach people how to follow those regulations and write policies that meet those. And now I'm a business analyst, so I'm no longer in a plant. Okay. So now I work at the headquarters in the Woodlands. I'm a business analyst, so part of my role is to look at the prices, the volumes of products that we're producing, making sure that we're optimizing the way that we run our plants. We're choosing the right feedstocks to make the most money and the most efficient, run our plants the most efficient way possible. And I also look at growth opportunities, building new plants, expanding existing plants, things like that, so that our company can grow and reach out to new opportunities.
Great, thank you. Students, there's that family life balance that we talked about on some of our family work balance that we've talked about on some of our other panels. So thank you, Corey. All right, Amy.
Okay, yes, thank you, Corey, because that's for real life. Okay, I'm Amy Meyersick. I am the aromatics commercial manager here for CP Chem. I'll try and stick to the same way Corey did it. So I'm a mechanical engineer by degree. I went to the University of Texas. There I also got a minor in business. I've been with the company since I graduated college. So that's going to date me. I've been here 17 years. I started with the company down at Sweeney. It's a facility that has 3 ethylene plants, and Corey kind of went through sort of the ethylene plant. So I was there for 5 years. I had different roles. I was in the project group, the design group, construction group, all sort of tied to projects. And then I got a couple months on a unit similar to the way Corey mentioned. And then I transitioned up to headquarters because I had been at the plant. I had seen what I could do there. But I had to flex any business muscles, so I wanted to see what that looked like. So I came up to headquarters and started in our NAO group as a supply chain specialist, and then have had various roles as a business analyst, a product manager, a planning manager, until I transitioned into my current role, which is the aromatics commercial manager. And what that is I'm responsible for 3 product lines: our benzene product line, our cyclohexane product line, and our styrene product line. The neat thing about this job is we have some assets that are international. So we have a Saudi joint venture that produces the benzene, cyclo, and styrene monomer, and we market that worldwide. And so I've had the opportunity to go travel internationally. The regional managers for the aromatics group report to me, so I've been able to go to Europe and Asia and see customers there. So I've really appreciated that about that aspect of this role mostly. So, and we'll dig in a little bit deeper about what the products are and what we do in our presentation. So I'll just turn it over to the next person.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Jeff?
Sure thing. So I started off when I graduated from Purdue University with a chemical engineering degree in 2009 at the Pasadena Plastics Complex, which is in Pasadena, Texas. And when I was there, I was a process engineer, which basically looks at everything. You know, all engineers, typically what you want to do is you want to optimize. You look at a system and a subset and you say, how can I make this better? How can I make it cheaper? How can I make it faster? How can I make it stronger? So that was what I did as a process engineer. Kind of looking at the process and saying, can we lower the temperature on this operating rate? Can we maybe increase more pounds if we don't have this limitation? And did that for a year, then moved into an operations role where you're looking at the day-to-day, where you're actually setting the schedule for what you're going to be producing. It's a lot more active role where, you know, if something goes wrong and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're still going to be getting a call, which is kind of interesting. It's not for everyone, but if it is for you, you'll know it immediately. And I really enjoyed that role immensely, but then, you know, I did feel like I needed to go in a different role. And after that, I did the same thing that Corey did, where I was in operational excellence. And that's a really good role because you do work very closely with regulation and why do we need to do this again? You know, you answer that question all the time for safety regulations, for environmental regulations, making sure that you're doing everything you can to make sure that you're producing as cleanly as possible and everything's working fine. After that, I was at the plant for 5 years and I went to get my MBA from University of Texas. And at that point, I became a business analyst for some other product lines. And Corey already explained business analyst, so I'm not going to go into that. They were different products, though, which we will talk about later in the presentation. And then since then, I've become a product manager. And what a product manager does is we like to talk to our customers, make sure everything's going smoothly, track our shipments, deal with contracts. So, you know, the customer says, oh, I want to pay less money for that thing. We're like, well, we think you should pay more money. And then you kind of come to agreement somewhere in the middle. It's a lot of fun, very exciting, especially when you get to, you know, take trips and see what happens. I'm a product manager for cyclohexane, which goes into nylon. And nylon is something that is, airbags are made out of nylon, so it keeps people safe in cars when you have car accidents. It's tire cord that goes into the tire. It's fibers that go into synthetic clothing and all sorts of stuff, and carpeting as well. So it's, you know, a lot of very durable products that save people's lives, and I love what I do for my job.
A good thing you said that because your boss is on the phone.
Yep, Amy is my boss, so she's a great boss too. She is.
Great, thank you, Jeff. I'll turn it over to James.
All right, guys. I'm also a chemical engineer from Purdue University. I'm a little older though. I graduated in 2006. So I'm 14 years with the company. Spent 8 of those years working at 2 different plants, various chemical engineering roles at the plants, mostly in ethylene. You've heard Corey and you've heard several others describe what the plants do for ethylene, making the building blocks to other chemicals. After the 8 years at the plants, I also tried to flex my business muscles and go up to headquarters. So I was an NAOPAO business analyst when I came up to headquarters. Did that for a little bit. Had an opportunity to go over to one of our Middle East joint ventures and work on an expansion project out there for half a year before coming back to headquarters. And I'm currently doing polyethylene production planning. Polyethylene, you haven't heard that yet, but that's another derivative. Basically using the ethylene building block, you make chains of the carbons, and this becomes a plastic pellet. So you've heard Jeff talk about in the operations capacity, setting a schedule for polyethylene and making those different types of plastic. I'm on the commercial end. I'm on the headquarters end where I interact with our sales reps, sales folks who are in close contact with all of our customers. So our customers decide what they want to buy. And knowing that, I help manage the inventory of each different resin type, each different polyethylene type. And I work daily with the operations engineer in all of our plastics plants to make sure that we're producing the right kinds of plastic and we have the right kinds of inventory for that plastic. So that's my job now as a production planner for polyethylene. And I also got my MBA recently at Rice.
Okay, so I guess that leaves me. Hi, I'm Georgina Goodnight. I'm the ethylene commercial manager at Chevron Phillips. I've worked here, like Amy, since I graduated back in 2003. So I've been with the company for 17 years. I'm a chemical engineer by background from the University of Texas, and have served in a variety of roles here at CP Chem. Started my career as an account manager, actually in a field sales role. So I was responsible for managing the relationships with a lot of our customers in the north central part of the US for the polypropylene product line. The job was a lot of fun. I was in field sales for about 5 years as an account manager, and then I transitioned and took a more technical role as an operations engineer. So I think we're 5 for 5 in that regard here. So operations engineer, really, they do the work that is just kind of the lifeblood of the company. You're responsible for a manufacturing unit and making sure that it runs safely, and the product that you produce is up to quality standards and is made as quickly and efficiently as possible at the same time. And that job, it's a grind. It's a lot of really hard work, but it's a great learning experience, and you get an opportunity to really function in a team environment. When I worked in the unit, I had 4 different shifts of operators that I worked with, and that was a great experience. So after 2 years, I came back to the commercial side of things. I was a business analyst for about 4 years, and I had an opportunity to work in one of our smaller businesses. It was a specialty plastics business. Learned a lot there. We actually eventually ended up selling that business, and so I got an opportunity to kind of dabble in the mergers and acquisitions part of business a little bit. And from there, I transitioned into a role as a global product manager. And so as a global product manager, you really get a chance to utilize the skills you picked up as an operations engineer, the business acumen that you developed during your role as a business analyst. And I also had in that job a chance to grow and understand the logistics of that business, which is something I hadn't had a chance to do before. And so in that role, you did a lot of problem solving. And so as an engineer, that's one of the things that is really the foundation of what you're doing in an engineering curriculum is problem solving. But instead of with temperatures and pressures, right, as a product manager, now I'm doing it with volume and margins. And so figuring out how to get product from A to B, you do a lot of problem solving in that regard. And so that was a really interesting and challenging role. So I did that job only for about 15 months. And then I transitioned into a role as a planning manager. Amy and I got to be partners in crime there. While she was the planning manager for petrochemicals, I had first the polymers business and then the specialty chemicals and polymers businesses. So in that role, I had an opportunity to support 3 of our vice presidents. And it's kind of a role where you're a jack of all trades, master of none. You are responsible for coordinating the accumulation of a lot of information, a lot of business information, business strategy, budgets, capital plans. And you, a lot of times nobody works for you, but you have to get them to help you do things. And so that's actually one of the biggest challenges in that planning manager role. And the other thing, it's also a very highly visible role. So if you make a mistake, it's pretty visible. So you can never make the same one twice. You got to make it, learn from it, move on. And then last but not least, it brings me to the role I'm in today, which is the ethylene commercial manager. So I'm really responsible for the P&L, for the profit and loss statement for the ethylene business. And so to kind of put that in perspective, CP Chem as a whole probably makes about 25 billion pounds a year of product. Ethylene is about 12 billion pounds. So my product line here, ethylene, a lot of volume involved in this product line. And so it's really an intermediary between our feedstock group, a bunch of really smart guys who are out there buying feedstocks for us to run in our ethylene plants. And then I turn around and sell the majority of that to our internal customers, which would be James over there. James is one of my internal customers. And so it's a lot of fun. It's a great commercial role. We've got a lot of autonomy as commercial managers, a lot of responsibility. And so we've got a really good team here. And when I look around at the folks here on the call from CP Chem, Corey and I get an opportunity to work together every day, which is awesome. You know, Jeff and I worked together back at the plant. You know, he talked about when he started at Pasadena, you know, and I remember that because we were there together at the same time. And then, you know, James and I overlapped in alpha olefins, and Amy and I go back really the furthest of all. So Chevron Phillips is a great place to work. I think you've heard all of us talk about a variety of roles that we've served in. A lot of us have done the same types of jobs. And one of the things that's interesting is, you know, you've seen people talk about jobs that they were in for several years, right? And then you've seen them where they were only in it for about a year and a half. And so, you know, kind of as you move throughout your career, you can kind of balance jobs where you get exposure to things and jobs where you really get in-depth experience. So CPM is a great place to do it.
Thank you, guys. We are, again, excited to have you. So I am going to, Jeff, if you're ready, I'm going to share my screen. Students, they have a short presentation that they would like to share with you.
We can just go to slide 2.
All right.
So Chevron Phillips Chemical Company, a lot of people are familiar with Chevron, a lot of people are familiar with Phillips 66. And the way that we came to be was in the year 2000, we were formed when they took all the chemical ventures from Chevron and all the chemical ventures from Phillips, and they put it together. They said, I think that there's a lot of stuff here that'll work really, really well. And if you guys put it together, then it'll work even better than if we have it separately. So they created this joint venture. They called it Chevron Phillips Chemical. They flipped a coin because they didn't know if they wanted to call it Chevron Phillips or Phillips Chevron. Chevron Phillips won. I think that sounds a lot better than Phillips Chevron. And we were downtown Houston for the first couple of years, which is what Monica alluded to. We came up to the Woodlands in like 2002, 2003 timeframe. And we've been here ever since as our headquarters. Are we able to move to the next slide? I'm just seeing.
We may want to put it in presentation mode as well.
Yeah, because I'm just seeing the presentation right now.
Okay, give me just a second.
Okay. But you can see on the front slide that, you know, we have these huge pieces of equipment here. They have condensers and reactors and distillation columns, all sorts of really amazing stuff to work with when you do go to college and you learn about how you are going to be purifying chemicals or, you know, making new things. So it's just something that's really impressive to work with. As people talked about at Sweeney, you know, when I was at Pasadena, there was stuff that was like 6-inch line valves and that kind of thing. But at Sweeney, it's 72 inches. We're talking about just way, way bigger, you know, valves that you could stand inside comfortably and there's no issue compared to, you know, what I was used to, which is tiny. So there's all sorts of different scale. And as we've moved forward in the years that we've existed as a company, it's all gotten bigger and bigger and bigger.
Okay, so Jeff, what are you seeing?
Can you go back one slide? I'm at the manufacturer. Okay, about us.
Yeah.
You can see that?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay.
And as Georgina said earlier, you know, we do produce just an insane amount of products. We have 70,000 consumer and industrial products that it goes into. For the most part, we do intermediates. So you don't see a Chevron Phillips chemical product on the shelf for the most part. You'll see things that are produced and sold at your gas stations and at your grocery stores that have products in them, like, you know, dish soap or hand sanitizer. You know, we make bottles that are holding the products that you buy, but you're not going to see something from Chevron Phillips that's marketed to consumers for the most part. We do have $17 billion in assets and more than $9 billion in annual revenues. That changes the price of oil. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. Right now it's, you know, different because of the lower prices of oil. So We do try to be a very trusted supplier, and we do have a very, very highly educated and diverse workforce of 5,000 employees. You come in and you'll work with people, and the first couple of times I was talking to someone, they seemed like a very down-to-earth person, and then I find out they have a PhD that they just seem extremely intelligent, but they don't really come off that way. They just want to work with you and make the best product you could possibly make. We can go to the next slide. These are the manufacturing locations. We are predominantly located on the Gulf, both in Texas, the U.S. Gulf Coast, and then also the Persian Gulf Coast in Qatar and Saudi Arabia. We do have licensing as well in South America, and we have operations in Belgium, along with some offices in Singapore. So for the most part, everything that we produce is in Texas. We do have some performance pipe locations that are out of Texas, but we like the Gulf Coast. It's a great place to operate and a great place to work. Going to our cultures, safety is our definitely most important piece of our culture. You see safety everywhere. When you drive in at our plants, we can't let you drive more than 9.5 miles an hour. We make that specific. If you're at 10, 2 digits is too fast. You have to be wearing your seatbelt. You can't be texting while you're walking. All sorts of things are very important. That's because we want people to go home the way that they came into work. We want them to be safe. We want them to do their job safely and be happy and go home so that they can provide to their families and they can come back the next day and keep on doing what they're doing. We have seen drastic reductions in our recordable incident rate, which is something that is reported to OSHA. And every single one of our sites is a VPP star site, which is quite an accomplishment. It took a lot of work to get there. But OSHA recognizes us as someone who's very, very safe. And also the American Chemistry Council saying that we were the company of the year in 2016. So we've been recognized by the industry as being extremely safe. It's something that's just in the blood of CP Chem, that you can't get away from safety culture for our company. And here's the graphic that shows CP Chem, which is the green bar, and how it compares to the top quartile, the top 10%, and then the ACC best. So this is for our global operations. We're right there with the best, right there, better than the top 10% in the last few years. So like I said, we really care about safety and we perform very well.
The only thing I would add, Jeff, just because they're not acronym savvy, they haven't been indoctrinated to 50,000 acronyms. ACC is American Chemistry Council.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. So sustainability is also very, very important. We do make plastic, and we recognize that plastic waste is an issue. We are a founding member of the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. So we've put up money to make sure that the plastic that we make, after it's used by consumers, it doesn't end up in the ocean. It's not going to end up someplace that it shouldn't be. We care about the environment. We want to make sure that the products that we make, which are great products, that they don't end up where they're not supposed to be. So that's a big portion of what we're doing day to day, making sure that we're responsible and that our plastic isn't ending up anywhere where it's not supposed to be. So the things that we talked about, we have some commercial products. Ethylene, Georgina is the ethylene commercial manager. Polyethylene, with James being the production planner there. Propylene, it comes off of our crackers. It's very similar to ethylene, just one carbon chain more. Polypropylene we do internationally, and that's similar to polyethylene. PAO goes into all sorts of different things. That's driven off of ethylene as well. The Sentinel gas odorants is pretty interesting. That's what Georgina was talking about when she was a planning manager over the specialty chemicals. It's the sticky stuff that goes into natural gas so that when you turn on your oven, you can smell it because it's naturally not odorized, and you go, huh, I can smell gas. That's because we put the odorant in there. It's basically just us and one other company that does it. It's highly regulated. You have to be careful because if you have a leak, it's really, really concentrated and you can smell it for miles and miles. So that's one area where we're very, very cautious with our product. So benzene is something that goes into, again, all sorts of stuff. It goes into styrene. It goes into cyclohexane, which is what I am the product manager for. Styrene is used for polystyrene. It's used for all sorts of stuff. And then we also have Soltex drilling mud additives for downhole drilling, which is more upstream. So we have all sorts of industries that we put these products in, going into adhesives and sealants, agricultural chemicals with spec chem, or stuff that's defoliants, or it'll help with, just making sure that you have the right amino acids. Going into appliances for ABS, which is acrylonitrile butadiene styrene. Automotive is really, really big for us. Gas tanks, like I said earlier, we have airbags, tire yarns. Going into EcoSolve is what we call it, which is a dry cleaning fluid, just all sorts of stuff. So we're really excited to be in all these markets and help out where we can. Polyalpha olefins goes into lubricants. We do a lot of film for packaging. So anything that we can, get our hands into, we try to, because we want to make things better. So in terms of our demographics, you can see that one big area that we have is operations and maintenance here. We have a whole bunch of people that are working the day-to-day, making sure that the pumps are running and the reactors are running and we don't have any vibration issues. 56% of our people are there. Engineering technology, which if you get an engineering degree, that's where you fit in. And that's people that are process engineers trying to do optimization. We also have staff groups, which is our legal group and finance analysts, safety folks, IT, human resources, people that are helping support the day-to-day business. A lot of the people that are on this call today, though, Georgina, Amy, myself, Corey, we're part of the commercial group. So we're the ones who are focused on the customer side, making sure that we're meeting what our customers expect of us, responding to them if there are any issues, making things better. And then in addition to that, it's just the administrative portion, which is everyone who kind of gives out the orders and make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
So Jeff, I just want to take this opportunity and make a quick plug for the versatility of an engineering degree, because I know engineers in commercial, I know engineers that actually work in the staff groups. Either I've known an engineer who's worked in HR and also in finance, and especially in safety and IT. I know engineers in engineering and technology, and I also know engineers that are in operations and maintenance. So when you look at, our the positions for which we hire, I know engineers who work in 95% of the space, who have skills that can apply in 95% of our workforce, which is pretty impressive when it comes to just really the versatility of an engineering degree. So I'll just make that plug.
It's a great.
I'll do another plug. Taking a step back away from CP Chem, although I don't want to do it, but I know of engineers that have gone on to law school and have gone on to med school and done a pivot. But having that engineering background, knowing how to study, helped them through grad school.
And I will take that and I will bring it back to CP Chem and say that, there is an engineer I worked with early in my career who decided he wanted to specialize in environmental, and most specifically in environmental law. And through the benefits package CP Chem offers for educational assistance, he went to law school and now works in our legal department. So very, very versatile. Engineering, I guess, bottom line, it's a very versatile degree.
It is, yeah. We do have a member. Okay, so for community involvement, this is one where we also want to make sure that we're being good neighbors and good stewards of our environment. So what we want to do is we want to help out, put our time and our talent and our treasure into our communities. We want to help out with building new homes for Habitat for Humanity. We help out with junior achievement, going to schools and offering lessons. Right now we're doing this with the Education for Tomorrow Alliance, just so you guys can get an image of what we do on a day-to-day basis for Chevron Phillips. Things that we want to make sure that we're tied to our environments and that we're making our communities as impressive places as we can, because we live here, we work here, and we want to make it the best place we can be.
And when we think about core values, right? So CP Chem has kind of this newly adopted tagline. It's performance by design and caring by choice. And I think you see a lot of the caring by choice in this community involvement that's present at all of the sites where we operate and really throughout various levels of the organization. And the company even changed our benefits about a year or two ago to where now we get 2 days a year that are paid where we can take leave and go volunteer in the community. And it's paid leave and we go volunteer. And you can volunteer wherever you want as an employee. It's a benefit that we offer that really shows to me that our benefits package aligns with our company's core values of the caring by choice.
That's very true. Yeah. So it was very recent that we got that new benefit at the start of 2019 to have 2 days where you go off and you volunteer. And that's great. We also had something which is fantastic for me because I just became a father on Saturday and we have 2 weeks of parental leave. So I'm able to be at home and help out my wife while she recovers from giving birth and able to help out while people like my boss, Amy, cover for me in the office.
I was about to say, your wife's probably like, well, where are you now?
So another thing that we have, which I forgot to put this in the presentation, is our diversity and inclusion portion. It's what we call iCare, and we have a big focus on that. It's inclusion, cooperation, accountability, and respect every day. And, you know, with everything that's been going on in the news, our CEO came out and sent a letter similar to some other comments that have been made by other companies where we do find what's been going on. We want to fight intolerance, we want to fight injustice, and we're going to do what we can to make sure that everyone feels included. We really care about people that we work with, and we want to make sure that they feel cared for and that they're appreciated. And that's one thing that we focus on every day.
And the other thing, when I think about the caring by choice part, we're very active in the sustainability space through the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, right? And so as a company that does manufacture plastics, you would think, oh, well, you guys must be in opposition of, you know, recycling or things like that. And the answer is absolutely not, quite the contrary. You know, we are very focused to committed to solving the problems, because right now the plastics life cycle, plastic waste isn't ending up where it's supposed to, right? It's supposed to end up recycled or it's supposed to end up in a landfill. It's not supposed to end up in a river or an ocean. And we are very committed to providing resources to places like the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, committing these resources to help solve those problems. And, you know, as engineers, that's essentially what engineers are paid to do, right, is problem solve. And so that is a big problem for our industry, a big problem for our communities, and we're very committed. We care a lot about that, about sustainability.
So with that, I think we're done with the presentation. We can move to Q&A if you guys want to.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, it looks like, let me just catch up on the questions that have been asked. All right, so James, I'm not sure what you've answered. So I see your answer, but I'm just going to bring over.
You wrote a small novel, it looks like.
It could have been so much longer. That's like the abbreviated clip note.
So Mariana, I'm going to bring you over just because I'm not sure all of our students have access to seeing all of the chat, and so I just want to make sure that everybody can hear your answer.
Hi. I was just wondering, what are some differences that maybe you guys have seen from the start of your career to now in like different companies and different jobs that you have done over the years?
So I'm going to take the softball answer. One of the things over the last 17 years that I've seen throughout industry, but especially at Chevron Phillips, is there is an increased emphasis on flexible work schedules. So we have, ever since I worked for the company, we've had a 980 work schedule. And so what the 980 work schedule means to us is over the course of 9 working days, you'll do your 80 hours. Whereas in a normal kind of traditional work environment, it's 10 working days to do 80 hours. And so during that 9-day period, our average day is a little bit longer than somebody on a traditional schedule, but we have every other Friday off as a result. And so that's kind of where we started on this journey. And where we are today is we're more flexible with work from home. And I think that there's even, some opportunities, to do a work from home, multiple days a week, kind of depending upon your job function. So that's one of the biggest changes I've seen is we are more focused on providing a flexible work environment.
I'll add after Georgina, in terms of different companies and cultures, I interned with Lyondell, and they're a similar company in terms of what they make, and they have a large footprint worldwide for what they do. But I would say that their last two CEOs they got from Chevron Phillips, so they obviously recognize that we have a lot of talent here for the company.
And I guess for those that haven't had a chance to read my novel response, I'll summarize that verbally. I was a co-op with GE Plastics when I was at Purdue. So I worked 5 internship terms with GE, and I was trying to speak to culture. At GE, it felt like working with other engineers and working with others, the way their performance management was structured, they were force ranked against each other, and never fully felt like someone was willing to help me for fear of perhaps I will be ranked above them one day or ranked above them at the end of the year. And it was great experience getting to apply what I was learning at school to the workforce. But ultimately, I didn't want to go back to GE Plastics when I graduated. Chevron Phillips, when I visited the Baytown facility for my interview, everyone that I met there was so welcoming, and it seemed like everybody enjoyed what they were doing. Everybody was collaborative. Everybody loved working together, and that's what attracted me to join CP Chem. And throughout the years, I still feel that today. The collaboration, the enjoying what we do and who we work with. So I tried to answer that question in 2 ways: different company perspective, and then how it changed over the years. It hasn't. The culture is still here.
Yeah. I guess I would add, so I've only worked with CP Chem since I graduated, so it's what I've known. Obviously, we interact with a lot of different companies, so we kind of have an idea of what happens elsewhere. I'm not going to talk about other companies, but I'm going to talk about something that I've enjoyed, that I've actually experienced from when I first started all the way till now, and it's that CP Chem looks at you as a whole person. So I was hired as a mechanical engineer, but I was given opportunities to do something that maybe a traditional chemical engineer would do. So I got to go on a unit, even though that wasn't necessarily my training. At the plant, they heard when I said, when I first hired in, they hired 1 engineer, and then about 6 months later, 1 more engineer came in, and maybe 6 months after that, another engineer came in. So it was a little bit difficult at first to be that one new person. And I went straight into projects, which is you kind of need to know a lot about things in a lot of different areas to be a good project engineer to oversee it. And so I voiced my concerns that maybe we shouldn't necessarily start people as a project engineer, maybe give them some other roles to see to make them more successful. And from that spurred what we did at Sweeney was a rotational program. And then what they saw at Sweeney and at this rotational program actually ended up turning into what we call our grad program. So when you graduate from college and you enter CP Chem, you go into a 2-year rotational program. Grad stands for Graduate Rotation and Development Program. And it's 2 years. You get 2 different assignments within the company. There's also a full training program over those 2 years. And it's interesting to see because that's an idea that has sustained and is moving on. And maybe I'm the only one who thinks I had a piece in it, but it is interesting to feel like you had a piece in that. Another thing that they afforded me to do is we started what we called a new hire network, which is a way to get new hires together and talk about their experiences, because you might have someone who's new in maintenance, you might have someone new in operations, and they're used to the people that they work with, but they didn't really get to interact. So they gave us that opportunity. So I've always appreciated that the company has given us that avenue to voice what we see might work, and then given us the freedom to create that and cultivate that. And so it's great to have the day-to-day jobs, but I also like to have sort of those, what I call them, kind of extracurricular things to use a different part of my brain. And it ends up working well for the company too, because they get a program that works out pretty well. So that's one thing that I've seen consistently through my years, and something that I haven't seen some of my counterparts have in the companies they work for.
When before I came to CPM, sorry, Corinne. So before I came here, I did my internship with Valero at the oil refinery. And one key difference I noted between Chevron, Phillips, and Valero, and even some other places where my fellow students did their internship, as soon as you show up, are real projects. They're real challenges. They're not busy work. They're not simple tasks that you could do whether or not you had an engineering degree. They really challenge you, and they give you the tools to do them successfully. I've been to countless trainings. I would say 50% of them were just in the first 2 years in the company, where they taught me in-depth distillation, and they taught me everything about pumps and safety valves and the really detailed training that I didn't necessarily get when I was in college, right? College was a lot of theory and calculations and math and computer simulations. But when you come to a plant, you need the hands-on, you need to see how it works. And the company did a great job setting myself and everyone else up for success by teaching us the ins and outs of our business, not just letting us figure it out on our own. They really helped us out.
I think one of the questions was how much of the theory we use in the actual workplace. I would say in my 8 years working in the plants, I used a lot of the engineering concepts that we learned in school. Corey, you talked about the simulations. I spent a whole year simulating our ethylene plant and then comparing theoretical data to actual measured data and seeing where the gaps are and where we can make improvements in either measurement or changing the entire process or rearranging how flows go to make the process better. In Port Arthur, I was an energy coordinator where I did all sorts of compressor calculations to calculate efficiencies and how it changed over time between total unit shutdowns and cleanings. So knowing all the math, all the science that we studied in school, if you look for it, if you want it, there are real opportunities to use and apply all of that stuff.
Oh, Georgina, did you want?
No, I'm just seeing all these great questions pop up in the chat. I just want to answer all of them.
Yes, I'm gonna pull over. Nandini, yours is a specific question, so I just want to give you a chance to ask that. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you guys for sharing your information with us. My question was that you guys talked about making ethanol, right? In AP Chem, I learned that ethanol is made with carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and they bond to each other. When you say you make ethanol, do you guys actually mix the elements, and how do you guys do it? Thank you.
So perhaps it's in reference to ethane, and so all right. So I'm going to try to talk about our value chain.
Hey, Georgina, just real quick. So just to be 100% clear, we don't make ethanol. We make ethylene. So we can't really comment, but right? I mean,
yeah.
So I think
I don't agree. We don't make ethanol.
So I think so the question's about the chemistry, right? So the question is about
Yes, let's talk. Let's go into our chemistry. I just want to make sure she knows that it's not that we don't make the ethanol, but I would love for you to go into the chemistry of ethylene.
Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. So, and to be clear, it's been a couple of decades since I've actually been in a chemistry class. But okay, let's talk about chemistry. Okay. So the value chain for CP Chem really resides in hydrocarbons that we get from the earth, right? So crude oil production, there's a natural gas stream from crude oil production, right? And so we're able to purchase, right, hydrocarbons, and then we go through processes where we convert some of those hydrocarbons to different hydrocarbon formats through using high temperatures and high pressures in vessels, right? And then we separate out all of the different products, right? And so if this interests you more, I would say definitely look into organic chemistry, because that is the whole entire study of hydrogens and carbons and all of the awesome things that you can make with carbon and hydrogen. It's a very exhaustive list of things you can make. Pretty much everything we touch is from hydrocarbons, pretty much. Okay, so then we take it high temperature, high pressure, and then it forms multiple different products using either like 2 carbons and hydrogens, or 3 carbons and hydrogens, 4 carbons, so forth and so on. And then we take those and we separate out the different products in what's called distillation columns. And so distillation columns will separate the products based on their different boiling points. So you get the different phases between liquids and vapors. And then we further pressurize them, and then we transport them places where we use them in another process, right? So then we take our ethylene or our propylene, we take that, send it away, and it goes into a reactor where those feedstocks are reacted with catalysts. And then they are formed polymer chains, which is lots and lots and lots of carbons and lots of hydrogens. And so the polymers then are extruded through a die plate, and it almost looks like spaghetti, right? Anybody remember playing with Play-Doh, right? You put the Play-Doh in and you squeeze it through like a die plate with a lot of holes, and it ends up looking like spaghetti. So you do that same thing with a polymer, a molten polymer stream. You cool it off in water to get it to solidify, and then you have a rotating knife that goes around, and it takes the strings and it pelletizes them. So that is essentially the value chain process. Anybody want to add anything to that?
Did a great job there, Georgina. Thank you very much. Yeah, I guess the way that my brain works is we take something like ethane, and then we process it to where we make hydrogen and ethylene. So we don't just take the elemental carbon, hydrogen, and everything else and put that together. We do start off with something that you find in your environment, and then you purify it.
Exactly. And so one of the things you'll learn about as a chemical engineer is what we refer to as unit operations. And so each of the processes that we just described for taking a raw material and converting it into a different molecule, right? You learn about all that in unit operations as an engineer. Like there's critical pieces of equipment that you learn about, and those are reactors, distillation columns, heat exchangers. And so a lot of chemistry, organic chemistry, physical chemistry, thermodynamics, a lot of those classes and backgrounds really help you understand how these unit operations work together. So.
And that's not to say you can't do that. You can take pure carbon and hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen and everything else and to make your products. But as an engineer, you want to optimize. And so you're looking at something from, if this is available and it's pretty cheap, then maybe I should start off at that point as opposed to trying to make it from scratch and have everything kind of pure. And that's, you look at everything that you can when you're trying to make a process. Thank you for the question.
Yes, thank you. right, I'm going to bring over Jillian.
Hello, thank you so very much. So, coming straight out of college, how did you get noticed by Chevron to be hired by Chevron? Thank you.
That's a great question. Chevron, Phillips, and a lot of other companies, they all participate in what most colleges host and they call a job fair or career fair. At least at Texas Tech, it's different everywhere, but we do one in the fall, which is the big event, where seniors, juniors, sophomores, everybody go around, and it's literally like it's kind of like Houston Rodeo when you go down there and you go around the center and you're shopping and everybody's got a booth and they're saying, hey, come buy whatever I'm selling. It's almost like that, but with a ton of oil companies, engineering design firms. Everybody's set up with a small booth and they're saying, here's my company, come meet us. Let me take your resume. And if you get to talking, get to know them, and your resume looks great, they may offer you an interview. Sometimes it's for a co-op opportunity, sometimes it's for an internship, or if you're about to graduate, it's for your full-time career opportunity. And at least for me, that's where I landed with Chevron Phillips. I walked up to that booth. I struck up a great conversation with the recruiter. They took my resume.
We just lose him?
I don't know, Corey, I don't know, it froze, so I'm not.
Or you need that internet boost.
I think he put himself back on mute, so I think he is done. But I think he said he had a really good speech with his recruiter. I wish that I would have been the recruiter, but apparently I wasn't. So, but I do think the experience is similar to Corey, and I think that it brings up a good point, which is when you're looking at a college, this is a question that I never would have thought of going into college. When you're looking at your college choices, find out what they offer from a career assistance or career center perspective. And what kind of companies do they have core relationships with? What companies come and recruit? I think another good thing to do to get exposure to different companies when you're in college is join some of the organizations in the engineering school. For me, it was ASME. I know there's a CHEMI honors programs or whatever. Anytime they do an event, it's generally corporate sponsored. So somebody from a company is there, they tell you a little bit about their company. Use those opportunities to go engage folks. Ask these questions, the same kind of questions you're asking us. So you'll get a good feel about those companies. And I've found that if a company invests enough time and money with a university, they care about the students, they care about things, and that tells you a lot about a company, in my opinion.
Also take on leadership positions with those organizations. Whenever a company comes and visits a college to set up some of these things, they have to partner with an organization. And if you're in a leadership position with those organizations, you have more opportunities to interact and network with these company representatives. And that will be name recognition when it comes time to interview and hire on either for internships or full-time, but it helps set you apart too.
And regarding Chevron Phillips, for things that we look for, for engineering, for STEM, we do expect you to be competent, we expect you to be intelligent, but what we talked about earlier with the culture, we want you to care about your coworkers, we want you to be safe, we want you to make sure that you're being collaborative, because we hire people that we want to work with. So if we're going to be seeing you every day, we want to like you. So a lot of times that works out really well. And, every once in a while you do get someone who they were just really, really smart and they came in and they thought they were better than everyone else. And, after a period of time, they realize that, they don't really want to work with people that are just not really happy with them. So we do want to make sure that we have the proper cultural fit as well. So collaborative is great.
Good question. Thank you. All right, Samantha Lowe. So you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks for doing this. I was wondering, since several of y'all have worked with like engineering and it seems like a lot of y'all have done business too, would you recommend getting like a business minor in college or possibly like an MBA after getting your undergraduate degree?
I would say if you have even the slightest interest in business, then to do something in undergrad to make sure that you still have that interest. Getting an MBA, I'd say work a few years at the plants and really understanding what you do at the plants before getting the MBA. But it all depends on your interest. If you have any interest in entrepreneurship or any kind of business, then yeah, go do it. I would encourage you to pursue it. But if you think you're going to be miserable doing it, don't do it for the sake of yeah. Don't do it for that sake.
So when I look around the room at my peers in the commercial space that have engineering degrees, I think there's just as many people that have been successful pursuing a commercial route without an MBA as there have with an MBA. Chevron Phillips gives great on-the-job training when it comes to making the transition from an engineering role to a more commercial role. We give really good on-the-job training. And so I don't think an MBA is a must. I don't think you're at a disadvantage without one. I think kind of like James was saying, I think it's really just personal preference.
Yeah, I do. So I didn't get the MBA. I did do the business minor, and I appreciated when I came to work and I went into a plant, which is more technical, kind of knowing some of the concepts, because ultimately when you're in the plant, you're making a product and that's going to a customer, and to kind of sort of understand what the business folks are telling us at the plant was helpful. But I would say do it if you have an interest in it. If you have no interest in that and you just want to do math and science, then it's by no means a must. At the University of Texas, they offered a program that it was called Business Foundations, and when you were done with it, you got the equivalent of a minor. It added maybe a semester, some courses they took, and it was a really good broad overview. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I kind of was covering all the bases at that point.
It's probably a good idea to just make a clarification, because we're doing this with the Education for Tomorrow Alliance in Montgomery County, where CPM is headquartered. We deal with a lot of people that are at headquarters. So there are a lot of people that don't have MBAs or don't have business degrees that are very happy with their jobs, that are working at the plant and everything like that. We just have like a subset of employees here that are all working on the business side.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have kind of like a skew more towards getting business degrees, just to clarify.
That's a great point of clarification.
One piece of advice I'd give to anybody who's about to go and spend a lot of money on student loans and tuition, if an MBA is something that interests you, it would be financially beneficial if you waited and got into the business world, industry especially, offer programs where they will give you educational assistance. So they can offer you, some companies offer up to 80, 90, even 100% of your tuition payments to send you back to school while you're on the job. That's something I took advantage of when I came to Chevron Phillips. I got 80% of my tuition covered by the company, and that really took a burden off of me. And it also added the benefit that James mentioned, where I knew something about business and how a company worked before I got my MBA, and that made the curriculum so much easier to understand, because I understood and I could visualize a real world application of all the subjects they taught.
But if I were going back to college and I had a do-over, I would take some more frivolous and life enriching electives, and I would have put the accounting and the finance on the back burner if I had a do-over. I would have done a study abroad instead of a business foundations, and I probably would have done like a world history instead of an accounting if I had a do-over.
I took golf and it was awesome.
History of rock and roll, that was a really good class.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Okay, thank you guys. All right, Lauren Banker, I'm going to bring you over.
Hello, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day and doing this for us. My question is, what qualities/skills do you think are the most important when working in your certain branch or on a certain project?
Oh, teamwork. Everything I need to know I learned in kindergarten.
Yeah, that's one of the things, like, so yes, you go to engineering school, you learn the math and science behind it, but what you're really learning is how to problem solve in a very systemic, like, or systematic way. So you kind of use that in the same thing, which is, okay, what do I know? What do I not know? What am I trying to solve for? What are my constraints? And sometimes that's easy with like a scientific formula or math formula or whatnot. You can change those into sort of the people skills and things like that. So when you start thinking of it from that perspective, but exactly what Georgina said, being a good teammate and knowing when you don't know something, but knowing who to go ask and how to do that in a polite, respectful way. And we have something we call the tenets. It's the 10 tenets. It's what we live by. And I think tenet number 10 is the, I don't know, one that most people quote, which is always involve the experts when making a decision. So if you can remember to do that, I think that's the biggest skill that you have to have, but others can add.
I'd say communication, both written and verbal. You can do all the analysis. We all have the ability to do analyses. We all have the ability to crunch numbers, but being able to communicate your point efficiently, both written and verbal, is important. They're just to do it without misunderstanding or be able to convey what you're trying to say to your audience. Don't underestimate that.
And I'll just echo something Amy said. Our tenet 10 is always involve the experts, but education alone is not necessarily something that makes you an expert. Experience is a big piece of what makes somebody an expert in a field. And I found myself in 9 years surrounded by a lot of people who had a lot less education than I did, but they knew a heck of a lot more than I did. And relying on those people, building relationships with them, the guys who come to work every day or they clean up around the plant, they all know a lot more about how things work than you probably do because you've never been there. And until you strike up that conversation and get to know them and earn their trust and ask them hard questions, you'd be very, very surprised at how much you can learn from the people around you. So always ask questions, even if you think you know the answer. And a lot of times you'll find out you didn't know the answer.
That's so true. And the other thing I would do is advise while you're in school, practice those things. I didn't realize how many opportunities in school there were to do that. Presentations. I hated technical writing, one, because I didn't like technical writing, and then two, you had to present and they videoed you and everything like that. Little did I know that was one of the things that you probably need and use the most. So take advantage of all the opportunities that you get in high school and college, all of that. Otherwise, you're going to turn out talking and bumbling like me. So.
Is it all right if I answer Itzvan's question about becoming a process engineer?
Yes.
So you're asking about the classes that you take in college, and for CP Chem, you oftentimes start as a process engineer to get exposure to a process, and it really depends on the process that you're working on. So you're going to be working on different equipment and different reaction kinetics. So it's really just your general basis, like what Georgina was saying earlier, in thermodynamics and heat and mass transfer and stuff like that. For your professional engineering license, it's something where you take a test at the beginning, and it's called Fundamentals of Engineering. It's an 8-hour exam. You can either take it at the end of your college career, or you could choose to take it anytime you want, really. They do say that, the longer you're out of school, the more you forget, and it becomes harder and harder to pass the Fundamentals of Engineering exam. I took it in October after I graduated. If you graduate from an ABET accredited program, it's not hard at all. You'll get it, and then you become an FE, engineer in training is what they call it. After 5 years of being an engineer, then you can apply to become a professional engineer and you get a PE license. Again, it's another, I think, 8-hour exam. By that point in time, I decided that I wanted to go on the business side, so I did not do the PE license portion. So I can't really talk about that. We do have a lot of PEs that do work at CP Chem. It's something where, you know, it's fantastic because you do continue your education. You do go to classes, you learn more about pumps and heat exchangers and things that are special to your process. So if you're interested in going through that route, then I highly support it. It's great, and you continue in your education for the rest of your life.
Great, thank you guys. Okay, we have a couple hands raised, and so I want to get to them. So Derek, I'm gonna bring you over. If you could unmute.
Hey, thank you guys so much for sharing your insights. So I kind of had two quick questions. First, I'm curious, like in the current like economic situation, how do oil prices like affect your business? And also second, from a commercial perspective, what is Chevron Phillips' competitive advantage over other businesses that sell the same products?
Wow.
Very good question.
So I think I'll take competitive advantage, and I'm going to nominate Corey to take the crude question for the ethylene polyethylene chain. Okay, so great question on competitive advantage. That is definitely a popular phrase here at CP Chem. About 8 years ago, our company refreshed our corporate strategy, right? And so in this corporate strategy, we have what we call the 4 pillars. One of them's been mentioned already today. It has to do with operational excellence. And what operational excellence is focused on is continuous improvement, especially in the environmental health and safety space. So OE is the first pillar. The second pillar has to do with organizational capability, and it's making sure that we have the right people at the right time with the right skill set for the jobs that we have, right? It's making sure that we have training, talent development, all of these great programs in place to recruit, retain a highly skilled workforce. So organizational capability is the second one. The third one is competitive advantage. And at Chevron Phillips, we very much view one of our competitive advantages as our ability to access low-cost feedstocks for the products that we make. And so I mentioned earlier, one of the streams when people are producing crude oil, right? One of the streams that we get is natural gas. And so then we essentially get our feedstocks from that natural gas stream. And as you know, folks growing up in Houston, Texas, you're probably aware of the shale gas revolution and how shale gas is giving us here in the U.S. Access to low-cost feedstocks for a lot of the products that we make. And so with assets here in the U.S. and assets over in the Middle East, where there is an abundance of natural gas, CP Chem is well positioned to be able to acquire low-cost feedstocks for the products that we make. So in addition to that, we also believe in building what we call world-scale assets. So you get these economies of scale, right? When you have a bigger unit producing more products, the cost per product is a lot lower when you have bigger units. And so as we've embarked, since 2000, as we've embarked on our growth strategy, what the size units we've been building have been world scale units to help aid in that competitive advantage. And I'll just go ahead, before we move off that, I'll go ahead and make a plug for the 4th pillar. So the 4th pillar for Chevron Phillips is what we call sustainable growth. And so that's making sure that we can grow sustainably. And part of growing sustainably is making sure that the products that we make have the support of the communities around them. And it has really helped us enhance our focus on sustainability and really focus on the life cycle of plastics.
I'm going to add something to what Georgina said. I agree on all the competitive advantages that you spoke of, especially with the advantage feedstock. I think we also have a competitive advantage towards the customers as well. We have fantastic Bartlesville facility where all of our technical service sales folks are work from, and we send tech service to our customers to help them troubleshoot working with our plastic resins, at least on the polyethylene end, all over the place. So there's fantastic customer service in that regards that would have customers choose our resins over competitors' resins.
So to answer the piece about how the current economic status is impacting Chevron Phillips, I'm going to talk on a little bit bigger scale, bigger than just CP Chem, but on a worldwide view, the plants that make ethylene, which is the very beginning of our process, right? Turning natural gas that Georgina mentioned into a usable product like polyethylene or some other product. And in different parts of the world, people use different feedstocks. So we here in the US mostly use that natural gas. Some places can take a stream like liquid gasoline or butane or something heavier and put it through their plant and still create that same ethylene. When oil is expensive and gasoline's expensive, that's great for us because that shale gas is still very cheap. So we're able to buy a very cheap feedstock and still sell a good product. And when your costs of goods sold, your variable costs to produce that product are low, you can sell that product a little bit cheaper. And that gives you an advantage over your competitors. If you go around the globe to the other side of the world, to Asia or China, they don't use clean ethane. They use the heavy streams like oils and gasolines to make their ethylene and down the chain, their plastic and other products. When oil is expensive, they have a disadvantage, which means we have an advantage. So we can essentially take advantage of the pricing, right? We're buying cheap feedstocks and we're selling our products, sending them overseas to other countries and making a good profit. When oil gets very cheap, that advantage starts to get really squeezed to where some of those people in other countries or other parts of the world don't need to buy the American products. They're able to buy cheap feedstocks themselves and to meet their needs. So it squeezes our margins, but it's not stopping business. So we're still able to buy feedstocks that are low priced. We're selling our products at a low price, but that margin is as much money per pound. So it's always better for our business when oil is a little more expensive, so that we have that advantage over other parts of the world.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. We've had some great questions, and we are coming close to ending our session today. So I want to respect the time of our panelists for taking time to be with us and stick with that time commitment. Students and panelists, we like to end every session with asking the students what was their takeaway, what's something that they've learned from today's panel. And they've written it in the chat feature, but I like to bring a couple over just so you as panelists can hear from them as opposed to us just reading it. So Jose, I'm going to bring you over. There's two of you, so if I have the wrong one, can you unmute yourself?
Hello?
Yep.
Oh, all right. My takeaway from this panel is that, well, one thing I learned was just because you degree in chemical engineering doesn't mean you will necessarily have a technical job, as well as you're going to have opportunities to have a business side or a business type job. And there's more to it than being good with numbers and being analytical. You will also need to have communication skills, because you'll be working with a lot of people in projects and stuff. And finally, I appreciated that these professionals took their time to discuss their work to us. It is always more eye-opening when being able to hear their experiences and how they ended with their company and why.
Great, thank you. And then Ryan, is it Sook? I am terrible with names, so tell me if I'm wrong. Just first tell me how to say your last name.
That's fine. It's Suchak.
Okay, I would not have gotten that right. So tell us your takeaway.
No problem. Thank you very much for coming out here. I just really appreciate hearing all of you and all the valuable knowledge each of you had to share. It was great getting to learn about the Chevron Phillips collaborative and caring environment, and just hearing about the entire process of how the company works. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, so we have a couple more minutes, and I just want to take some time to thank again our panelists from Chevron Phillips Chemical for joining us today. Students, this is the first of our company panels, and so I'm really excited that I think this went well, and I think it was a lot of information that I even learned after working with a number of these individuals and hearing their stories and hearing about what they do. For myself, it gives me a little bit more into your organization. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time. Thank you for answering our questions. And students, thank you for joining us. I know you could have picked any of the panels that we have going on, and for there to be almost 60 of you guys on this call, we are extremely grateful for your involvement, and love the questions that you guys ask, and would encourage you to continue to ask those questions on our workshops and the other panels that we have coming up over the next 2 weeks, and also with your mentors. So 4 of the professionals on this call are some of our mentors. So that information has been sent out. They should be reaching out to you. And so you've gotten the look inside, and now you'll have a better opportunity to continue these conversations with them over the next 2 weeks. Monica, I want to turn it over to you before we end.
I just wanted to say thank you all for embracing this opportunity to share something good. There's lots of insights, and hopefully students had that opportunity to see the snapshot of, honestly, an engineering degree, regardless of the type, proves that you know how to think. And then, you have opportunities from there, depending upon your interest and, those relationships that you build along the way. So in addition to the technical skills, which obviously are a given as a starting point, if you're going to get a job at a place like this, you get a chance to hear some of those different paths and opportunities that have evolved over the years. So thank you all so much for the opportunity to share your words of wisdom, your experiences with the students here today.
And then I think we as CP Chem would like to thank Education for Tomorrow Alliance for giving us this opportunity and seeing the future, because that's one of the things I look forward to in the summer so much, is having the students here. It just gives me so much hope that maybe the world will be a better place because these are some really bright students who are really taking the initiative that you just want to see, and it's always just so uplifting. And so I so much appreciate that we were given the opportunity to still do this even in a different format. Thank you.
Yes, thank you guys. Again, thank you to Chevron Phillips Chemical Company for being our sponsor of this panel today. And students, at this time, we are finished and you are dismissed from the panel. And I always feel like I have to say that. We're ending class. So thank you guys for joining us. I hope that you have a great weekend. And panelists, thank you again for taking time. I hope you have a great Friday and a great weekend. We got our picture, right? Okay. All right. I know that's always a big one, so that we are all paying attention. So thank you guys. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Students, have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you over the next couple weeks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Corinne.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Monica.
you.
Thank
Nice
you
to
all
meet
for
you guys.
Nice
Jeff,
to
we
meet
hope
you.
you get some sleep.
I know.
Thank you for pulling all these great people in.
Yes.
Good job, Jeff.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
That is the thing, that every year students that that get the opportunity to be hosted there, they get that they're so welcoming, they're so friendly, they're so great, and to give their time to all the questions getting answered.
Okay, let me.
You're still recording.